Johnny come marching home again, hurrah, hurrah.
Frank Johnson.
Frank Johnson, thank you.
Frank A. Johnson.
Frank A. Johnson.
Yeah, I use that because there's other Johnsons around. Lots of them. See what he's doing. Because the elevator trim was on the outside of the console, and I was sitting over here, you know, I had to reach around and look at it. Over my whole head. So anyway, we start going down the runway, and I look out, and we're doing about 90 miles an hour. We should have been doing 150. We should have been up in the air about 150 feet also. And we're still on the ground. We've got 2 seconds to go to the end of the runway. So we hit the dirt at the end, and I hit him on the shoulder and took over control. And I got it, and I knew immediately what happened. He forgot to roll out the elevator trim for landing. In other words, with the engines off, you had a nice glide slope coming into the airport. If you applied 4,000 horsepower, that you wanted to go straight up in the air. That's what happened. The yoke came back on me. I got that Mickey Mouse seat there, and I don't have that much control over my motion, you know. So anyhow, I reached around and I spun the elevator trim, and it went all the way to the other extreme, but it took a couple of seconds to take the effect of it nose down. And when I pulled my sleeve back, I caught on the left throttle and shut the throttle down. So we're only on one engine now, and idling on the other. And you can't, on those, you couldn't throw them home, you know, because it would overload the induction system or the carburation light, and the engine could die on you then. So I had to feed it a little bit at a time, and I'm trying to push that wheel forward. Well, now the effect of the nose down trim is taking effect, and I'm going down. I don't know how high we were, only a couple hundred feet, maybe at the most. But anyhow, I start feeding the throttle. In the meantime, with one engine out, the right wing started coming up. And here again, you go over on your back and kill everybody. You could have stalled and dropped. A good stall on a 26 was 1,000 feet. In other words, that's how much altitude you would lose then. So anyhow, I'm nursing the throttle forward, and as I do, I had to get the elevator trim or the aileron trim. I had the ailerons all the way over to the extreme again to hold that wing down at where it was. And it was still coming up. So anyway, I kept playing with the throttle, got that up. Now I got it, and I'm wedged between the rudder pedals, Mickey Mouse type, because they folded. It was allowed the bombardier to climb up on the nose. And I was pushing all I could on the wheel, trying to hold the airplane up now. And it's still diving towards the ground. And all of a sudden my co-pilot came out of his daze or whatever, and he started rolling some elevator trim in. And it took the load off of me, and I was able to control everything and get it back to normal. I brought the airplane up to approach altitude, landed, parked, walked away from it, didn't say a word. I went back to my tent.
Didn't even talk to the co-pilot a little bit?
Nope, I didn't say nothing. I was pretty scared myself.
Where did all this happen? Where were you at?
It was up near Brussels, about 40 miles, Louvain, Brussels.
What was top speed on a B-26? They were pretty quick, weren't they, for a medium?
We cruised most of the time around 220.
Okay.
And it was redlined at 370.
Okay.
I put it in a dive one time and got up to 370 and tried to move the wheel, and I couldn't hardly move it. I had to use the trim tab to pull it out, you know, to use that, and it brought it up.
What was bomb load on those? Do you remember?
About 1,000.
About 1,000?
Yeah. It varied, you know, we carried incendiaries one time. They were packaged about that long, and they split in half as they fell. And then there was a cluster of about 12 incendiaries on each end of it.
Spread them out that way.
Yeah. They would fly apart and then fall down. and burned through everything, people and everything. So I sat up in Stone, England for 9 weeks waiting for an assignment. The B-26s had one of the best records of the war of all, the plane. And the 17 and the B-24 crews would come in one night and they were shipped out the next day. And they were gone, assigned, because their turnover was a lot greater. Our tour of duty was 65 missions. I only got up to 26 when the war ended. But then their tour of duty varied from 20, 25 to 30. And they tried to keep them as long as possible, but the turnover was bad. They had longer missions and they were up higher and more susceptible to jets and or enemy fighters and that. And they didn't get the escorts until they started putting the Rolls-Royce engine in the P-51. And then they could get up and go all the way to Berlin and back. Follow them all the way. They could stay with us. Our missions were only 4 hours. Or probably if you padded the paper a little bit, it might be 4.5 or something like that. If you wanted to try to get into a tower, say it's German, and listen to a tower, all you'd hear is music. If you had the frequency, unless you were about less than 10 miles away from that tower, then you start picking their conversation. And they had the dirigibles with the cables hanging down, or anchored down, take your wings off. And so they had a lot of other things that were to keep people away or keep the Germans away.
Right.
But anyhow, I went in right at the top of the cliff, and probably about 200 miles an hour better. And circling around, I'm going over one airport. I'm going to land at this one though. They were that close together.
Wow.
So,
Now, what was the last mission you flew? Do you remember?
oh yeah, well, we had jets up too, and my bombardier was a Toggle-Lear. It was an enlisted man. They were short of bombardiers, so they'd put them in the lead airplane and then a slot airplane, and the wing guys would get Toggle-Lears, and they watched the lead airplane. As soon as the bombs came out of the bomb bay, they'd hit a switch and salvo all the bombs out then.
Oh.
So they all come out kind of in unison then. And my bombardier, he had been hit a couple times, injured, shot that is, with flak. And he came different crews. He finally arrived with me. He had only 5 missions to go. So when these German jets came up after us, my other guys are in there, come on in, you SOB. And they're shooting, you hear the guns going. And I could tell what guns were firing by just the sound, the vibration. And I asked Cross, hey, how you doing up there? And quiet as a church. You only got 2 missions to go, and he wanted to live through them, you know.
Right.
So he was quiet. My heydays after the war, we flew, buzzed all over Germany and France. And one thing that took my breath away is going over Dunkirk. And I went by maybe 6 years after the episode they had there. And boy, the destruction was still there. Oh, it was terrible.
Back from 1940 then.
Yeah. Anyhow, it iced the tower a bit. I decided, well, we'll go down to see Paris. So I went down, and Eiffel Tower is 999 feet high. I went about 500 feet around it. Made 2 circles around, and I pulled up to go home, and I looked. There's a French fighter, actually a Hurricane fighter, English fighter, but French markings on it, 1 in each wing. And I found out there's a penalty after that. You aren't supposed to do that. Well, we saw the city in it. And then they sat there for a while, and then they peeled off. So kept on going, never heard anything.
When did you come home?
Well, in January of '46, Grant at Rockford up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell them how you came home.
Pardon?
Tell them how you came home on the boat.
Yes, on the boat. 10 days. We had 2 storms we went through in the winter. It was in December December. And the North Atlantic was terrible. The whole Atlantic was. It had 50-foot waves. And that Marshall Victory is what the name of the boat was. They go up in the air, you come up, and then boom, it like it's the next wave, and roll it like that, and then waddle up out of the hour after hour. And was I a 6 on up again. And 2 MP officers were in the same bedroom. Bedroom was 4 high, 2 deep, and you had that much room between another 8 guys. That was a bedroom. And you go potty and be sitting there and you have to get up and throw up. And oh, it was miserable. I went through one storm that I didn't have a navigator with after the war. We just buzzed around all over. But anyway, going back to the field again, Valencians, and they won't let us land. They're announcing, go to some other field and land there. Well, I didn't have any charts, I didn't have any navigator. So I said, I'm going to go through. So anyhow, I got down low, like the Air Force says, slow up a little bit, and pick a nice light area to go through. I got in there, and I understand there were about baseball-sized hail that hit me. And it looked like someone had taken the air, hit every part of the leading edge of the airplane with even the muffs around the props, down the base of the props, were dented from the hail. It cracked all the plexiglass in there. Nothing broke out though. So anyhow, I got through there, and there's 5 other airplanes flying around, and they won't let us land because of this macadam. They're afraid we're going to slide off the end of the runway and clobber each other. So right behind here is another squall line. So I elected to go through the top of this one, or try to. Well, the 26 didn't climb that all that good, you know. It took a while to get up there. So I went into the clouds anyway, and you get shear forces in there where you're sitting there at 10,000 feet, all of a sudden you're 9,000 feet, or even 8. Just like that. And the indicators, you're climbing, you're going down. So everything gets screwed up. But anyhow, I made it through that all right. And then they let us land. But there was about 6 airplanes all damaged, pretty bad. Well, sometimes I flew 2 missions a day.
Oh, wow.
One guy who started the same time I did, but his guys started reading comic books in the back and got away from the turrets. And a P-47, American type, built. It was flown by a German, came in and shot him up pretty bad where he had a crash land at an airport. He got in okay, but they damaged the flaps and everything on the backs of the wing. And he only got 15 missions in for the same length of time. I got 26 in. So.
I never heard of enemy Germans using
47s.
Yeah, they paint them all olive drab and then they paint them yellow on the bottom.
Really?
Yeah.
And captured these captured ones. They try to sneak
Yeah,
in.
well, they captured a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
we went.
Are those your actual wings?
Yeah.
That's the
I
one
had
you
a
want.
first lieutenant, 1-2, but I don't know, disappeared, lost it probably. Just a collection. Our archives are all down at Tucson, Arizona, at the Pima Air Museum. You ever get down there, are interested in airplanes, look at that one. But the 26s, when we were at the end of the war, or a couple months later, what we did is we flew 2 of them over to Landsberg, Germany, and dumped one off at a real short sod field. And they would crash into others, and what they do is drain all the solvents or the gasoline oils out of them, and then strip them and make pots and pans out of them. That was the end of them. A nice airplane. And there's only one flying today, and that's down in Polk City, Florida, Orlando. So anyhow, I was assigned any plane, about 5 of them. The guys would find out that some of them would use more fuel than others. So what they'd do is they'd land at this fighter base, which was near the front line. And the fighter base had found an underground cavern filled with wines and champagnes and cognacs and motorcycles, bikes, all kinds of stuff. So they brought all that stuff back. They had 5-gallon jerry cans filled with red wine sitting in the tent. I went to Union Station in Chicago, and I get there, and a bunch of officers and a whole bunch of cadets or new guys wearing clothes. We wore our same clothes for a week, and we went to Shepherd Field, Texas, before we got issue of clothes, GI. And then they just threw them at us, and I had pants that were about 4 inches too long. My legs didn't grow that fast.
So what year did you start flight school?
44D is when I got out. That was a year and a half. That was about 42. We went to Shepherd Field, Texas. And there was B-26s parked up there. I didn't know what one airplane from another, type was. But 25s were there too. A friend of mine flew one of those with a cannon in it, 75 millimeter. He said, and he was on a CVI theater, China, Burma. And he said when they fired that thing, the whole airplane was kind of stopped. And of course they had to aim the whole airplane to hit anything, and they never hit nothing. Yeah, the A-26s just got overseas there, and because they were taking off and losing an engine on takeoff, and there's no recovery. Well, I recovered from mine experience of single engine, but it was just lucky. I had an experience, I guess. These guys are all relatively new. They're in training, or first training party. And when they lose an engine, man, they're gone. They actually dumped 4 of them in Tampa Bay in 1 week.
Wow.
They figured the induction system, it had electric props on them, which were, if you idle too long sometimes, your batteries could run down, and then you'd get what they call a runaway prop. And what would happen is, instead of the blade cutting into the air, it would flatten out. So it wasn't cutting anything forward, and the engine would rev up to over 3,500 RPM, all stopped there, needle did. And
So you got no pitch.
Yeah, no pitch.
Yeah, no pitch at all.
Right.
Thought we were getting a buzz job, so we ran out of the barracks and we looked, and here's a B-26 about less than 100 feet above the ground. And he landed at the end of those and on the rest of the runway. He got down all right. I talked to him later. He had both runaway props, and they went up to over 3,500 RPM on the engines, but they held together until he got on the ground anyway. Yeah, I was going to take off at Dodge City one day, and I knew everybody that was flying. It was in my squadron, and there was a smoke coming up from about a half mile out from the end of the runway, and I got a queasy feeling in my chest. But anyhow, I went up and did my air work, came back down, then I found out it was my roommate. We were 2 to a room, and that was my roommate. What happened, we had to fly with Frenchmen, because they couldn't speak English, supposedly. That's an excuse. But anyway, he took off and he got a single engine, and the plane bellied in, or he had a belly in, wouldn't fly. And the Frenchman went out the top hatch and got out of the airplane. Bob, all he did is undid his safety belt, walked out of the side of the airplane, because the prop had bounced. The plane of the prop was right about here on you. And it came forward and tore the whole side of the engine, or the fuselage, open.
Wow.
he got shattered with plexiglass and pieces of metal. So he had to drop out of flying. He had a cast from here down to the ship. There was a lot of things I did that I shouldn't have done. Another example would be coming in on the approach one time. I was coming in, like looking the runway here. I was off at an angle like this. Well, I held it until I got almost to the ground, and then kicked up the rudder, got the airplane, and it popped. It went right off on the tangent like it was supposed to. But you know, when you get experience like that, you get the feel with the airplane. Now I'm gonna be 95. Oh, well, I can't beat that. I'll be 92, 30th of July. Well, branch of service. I can't see, so.
I was in the Army and 469th anti-aircraft. I was in New Guinea and I was in the Philippines.
Oh yeah? Like the Japs, huh?
Yeah.
I was over in the other position, or over in Europe.
And what kind of gun were you on?
40 millimeter.
I was going to run in and get in the ditch and lay there.
Where did you go for your training?
I watched them come along, went through an orchard and just shot the trees off like
And you were
like they were
you were drafted into the Air Corps.
Then they hit a corn crib and tipped that up. And
I was an
barn doors
operator.
and pushed them in and pulled the others set out on the backside.
Thank you for your
You're going to be sitting here. We're going to come bring back our stuff. Oh, we're going to come back to the fire. The fire is the best place to be.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
Nice talking to you.
I was in 469th Army. 469th aircraft.
Where was that?
Where was I? Where I trained?
No, where was that? Where were you stationed?
Oh, I was in New Guinea. I was 3 places, New Guinea, Melody Bay, French-Haven, India. Then I went to Leyte. Then I went to Manila. I ended up in Japan for about 3 weeks. I got to come home.
Everywhere.
Fighting jobs. That I don't know, just from what they did and everything. I don't know. My name's Stephen Parks. I'm from Ames, Iowa, and I'm 15.
Oh, Ames, Iowa?
Yeah.
Well, I got wet. I was riding in about that much water. 1948. I went out there to see my buddy going to school.
Iowa State?
Iowa State.
Yeah.
He was a bombardier, and anyhow, I went through. There was a tornado. I was just telling this lad that was sitting here about it.
Yeah.
I saw a tornado up ahead and was going to cross the road in front of me. It was over Route 30, 2-lane road, and I only could go about 40, 45 because the bike was sliding, moving around a little bit. Anyhow, I went into the abandoned gas station and stood there, and I was going to run down the ditch and lay down the ditch if it came near me, but it circled around and passed less than a half a mile away from me and went through an orchard, and it just like cut trees right off, you know, a certain height. And it hit a corn crib and tipped that upside down, and then they hit the barn doors and pushed them in and pulled outside ones out. And you could see wood floating up in the air. I got on the bike and I had to ride about an angle about like that because the winds were so strong, you know. I finally got behind it, but then it started raining like crazy.
Ed Strelo.
Ed Strelo?
Yep.
Where do you live?
In Sterling.
In Sterling.
Yep.
From what I see, you were obviously in the Army Air Force.
Yeah.
B-26. Where was the 454?
450?
Yeah, where were they stationed?
Valenciennes, France.
France?
Valenciennes, France, yeah.
What do you think of all of this? People
Well, I
wanting
think it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went on the honor flight, and we went through the thing at DuPage Airport a couple weeks ago.
After the war, did you ever fly again?
Just with friends.
Yeah.
It was, pilots were a dime a dozen. And and I was only twin engine, where a lot of them were 4. And I went into air traffic control.
I've been to Rockford.
You've been to Rockford?
Well, they're in a hole with the giant cannons sticking out there. It's filling up with water.
Well, we went to one up by Chicago.
By Franklin Park, by the airport?
Yeah.